Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever in the world you're joining us today. I am Jenny DiFigretto. I'm the community manager for DVC, and I will be your host today. If you are here, it's likely because you have learned that DVC, the open source project, has joined the lakeFS family. And today we are going to talk about how that came about and what happens next for DVC users in the project. So before we get started, let's do some housekeeping. All of the question and answers, please put them into the question button on your Zoom screen. That's how we will be monitoring the questions throughout the session. And please put as many questions as you'd like. On LinkedIn, if you're watching from there, you can use the comments and we'll be monitoring there for the questions. If one of your questions is, will there be a recording? Will I be able to see the recording? Yes, there is a recording and it will be shared with you via email. It will also be on the DVC YouTube channel. All the resources that are in this webinar today will be shared through that email and in the description in the YouTube. So next up, let's start with introductions. Today we have Dmitry Petrov, the creator of DVC, and also Oz Katz, the creator of lakeFS. And again, I'm Jenny DiFigretto, community manager of DVC and your host today. All right, let's get started. So same idea, different approaches. DVC and lakeFS are both about data version control, but they approach it from different directions. So let's start with Dmitry. What was, the inspiration of starting DVC? What were you seeing that led you to create DVC?
Sure, absolutely. DVC was started with a simple problem, lack of tools for data scientists, lack of productivity. And when, like before creating DVC, I was working as data scientist, like in Microsoft and some other companies. And it was clear that we need some better tools because inside big companies we usually have something, outside we have nothing. Or there were some tools, but like none of those were kind of good enough based on my opinion back then. And I started playing with this, start with a different idea, quickly realized that to efficiently run pipeline, data transformation pipeline, you need to care about data. And I kind of like doubled down on data ideas in my tool. And back then, it was very beginning of 2017. Back then, Git became a big thing because before Git was kind of like a geeky thingy that some people like were playing with. But in 2016, 17, 18, the whole industry was transitioning towards Git and Git ecosystem. And I really like this idea of Git ecosystem, CI/CD become popular. And I was thinking like I need to organize the whole workflow of data scientists around Git, CI/CD, and all this like a Git good stuff that's industry was pushing for. So that's how DVC got the name Data Version Control, because before there were kind of like a different names, possible names for that. And that's how we kind of approach the tool set that we are building all around Git, right? So we were building, then company started a bit later, right? And beside DVC, we also built CI/CD for ML, CML project, MLEM, which was model serving tool for machine model serving tool, and it was also built over the Git around the Git, right? And the idea was kind of like to cover the whole data scientist workflow with the Git around the Git. So if you fast forward this, like tour was like to 2023, maybe even 24, uh, it became clear that from one point of view, this Git-based approach works very well in some use cases because it uses ecosystem, right? It can integrate with different tools, including GitHub. But at the same time, this approach has quite a bit of disadvantages as well. Because you are working on top of another tool. It requires some integration step. It requires some additional commands. For example, like you need to run additional commands on top of Git or set up Git hooks. Sometimes this connection breaks. That's kind of like a limitation on the workflow. And sometimes some of the workflow of data scientists, they're way more dynamic and they cannot piggyback on the Git because Git is kind of more, you don't want to make like a 100 commits per day, right? You want to commit like a 3 commits per day, right? But not 100. So in some workflow, it didn't work. And also we had a business behind it, right? And we tried to monetize and kind of like a build the whole team monetization like around this tool set. And the biggest problem with monetization was if user use DVC, your SaaS is basically GitHub or GitLab. And most of the value goes to GitHub and GitLab. So basically, DVC helps people to utilize GitHub and GitLab better, which is great, right? And it's kind of like helps with this idea of like a Git ecosystem. But for business, for our business that we were building, it was not good because of value goes to like some other site. So, and at the same time, so that's kind of like the history, right? And then we start thinking about like what next, because as a business, especially as a venture business, we cannot do this way, right? As a DVC, it was we were thinking like how to like what direction to go to, and as a former data scientist, I was always like thinking about like a high level use cases, like how we can provide like a more value on the high level workflow for people rather than like infrastructure layer. And we start exploring like a lot of different ideas, how to work with data better, orchestrate resources, metadata become like a big thing, especially in multimodal data world. And we start working on a different project, which used to call DCX, and then it was data chain. And after working on data chain more than a year, we realized that's really hard to connect those two tools. I mean, they're connected, they can fit each other, but they're clearly a different use cases. And also we realized that after like a many months of development of data chain, we kind of don't spend time like on DVC, which kind of like not fair because like it should happen, like the project needs to live, right? Someone should take care of the project. We cannot like keep it in the current state. We cannot forget about DVC. And then we start thinking more seriously about like the next stages for DVC, what we should do. And luckily, we had some options because people were following up and saying like asking like if we wanna sell it or we wanna somehow collaborate.
Okay, wait, hold on. Before we get to that though, because that's my next question. I wanted to I wanted to like keep all of the things in order. So I wanted to also share with, and we'll get to that because that was a super curiosity for me, what was happening next. But I wanted to share with our DVC users because they may not be as familiar with lakeFS's story and how they arrived at data version control. So let's have Oz share that, and then I want to get into that next part.
Sure. So we'll keep everyone on the edge of their seat.
Yes.
Talking about lakeFS. So actually, we came to very kind of similar conclusions, but from a very different kind of starting point. So the background for lakeFS is more around data lakes, right? lakeFS, kind of in the name, where we faced kind of similar issues, right, around reproducibility and how do I keep track of changes as they're happening to data, but just at a very different scale and kind of different systems, teams that are using and utilizing that data. So essentially, a lot of the value proposition that came to be DVC also exists in lakeFS. It's just modeled differently, right? So instead of tying into your Git workflow, which makes a lot of sense for data science, you probably have a pretty bad time trying to like Git check out or DVC check out 8 petabytes of data. And that's kind of where we started our journey, with a few petabytes of data on S3. So we thought, what if we could design something that provides all the same like primitives, capabilities, the power that Git gives us, but instead of having to check out everything locally and work locally with the data, it's going to scale to the same dimensions that our object store scales to, right? How do I apply the Git model, but for those petabytes of data that were hosted on our object store? And that means that data gets both like read and written by distributed compute engines, by very large scale like AI and ML workflows, but also by data science and like MLOps teams. And we wanted to kind of solve this problem across the board with the same Git model, just implemented differently because it's not tied to a specific person currently running an experiment locally. So I guess kind of a tool versus infrastructure kind of approach here. Yeah, now everyone's on the edge of their seat. I think we can
Yes.
talk
Okay,
about
so
what
then
happens then.
and what happens next? So the next question, which was my curiosity, was how did this meeting and this transition actually come about? So yeah, from what I understand, Oz, like you guys first reached out, and so what was that like, and how did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, so we started a relationship with Dmitry, with Ivan, with some of the folks from the iterative team, like even prior to that, right? Just out of kind of common curiosity, because we saw that there is a lot of overlap in like our view of the world, our vision, how we believe data should be managed. But we kind of realized pretty quickly that there is no like big overlap in terms of like competing with each other, right? They do the same thing, but to slightly different audiences and in different ways. So like we kind of try to scope out and like try to feel each other out on terms of like how can we collaborate? Like we both have the same mission, right? We both want to teach the world how to treat data with the same rigor that code is being treated. That was kind of the beginning of our journey. And then I let Dmitry kind of walk you through what happened when they were at that crossroads.
Yeah. So what were your first thoughts about this, Dimitri?
So we are building different types of relationships and even try to collaborate with some companies, which like in the startup world, like it's usually like not easy to do the proper collaboration because like everyone is figuring out their business model, right? Like how to build things, how to integrate things, how to sell things. But we were exploring these collaboration opportunities with very different companies, from like a small ones to the massive companies like Nvidia and such. But in the beginning, it was absolutely not a priority, like to, I don't know, collaborate on such a huge scale, right? As we are doing this today. And we came back to this idea like when we realized we need to do something with DVC because we are so busy with data chain. Our direction, it goes like way upper to the stack on the metadata layer and the versioning of metadata rather than metadata with the data, and it's like a whole different product and not directly related to the DVC. And also, it was clear from the business point of view, it's a smart decision to do something with DVC, right? Because it's kind of like an asset that's kind of like needs resources, right, in order to thrive at the same time. And the business, like we are not ready to put resources there. And then I kind of like get back to this idea that maybe we should sell DVC. And in the beginning, I didn't understood like how big decision it is. And I start talking with the companies. We were lucky to have like a few potential like companies who can get DVC, who can buy DVC. And after a few discussions, like it was clear that lakeFS fits this like better to the picture of new home of DVC because they focus more on data versioning, right? It's basically the company around data versioning, right? While the other potential buyers were slightly in different area. Some of those were ML tooling, some of those were just big companies with interest on the data, but none of those were like so specifically focused on the on the on DVC, on versioning, on data versioning. And then, yeah, we had quite a bit of discussions. I remember like one discussion with not Oz, but Einat, Oz co-founder, and we were chatting about this like potential, and she was joking like, but we do data versioning, like who could be like a better mom for DVC than I can? And like, yeah, that's fair.
I love that story very much.
So yeah, and that's pretty much how it happened. Yeah.
From our perspective, it was always like our vision was to have data treated with the same rigor as code, right? So lakeFS does this for large scale enterprises. It does it for data lakes, but it's a piece of infrastructure, right? So it's not fit for every use case. And like smaller teams working with data locally, that's something that DVC does so well. For us, it was just another piece in that puzzle, like completing that vision, and really kind of cementing our place as this is how data should be managed, right? Data versioning is something that the world needs. And also like the fact that we're both, our roots are with open source. We loved the community behind DVC and the messaging with that community. So it just seemed like there's so much in common here. It's like a natural kind of piece in the puzzle that just made a lot of sense to us.
Yep, definitely. I can definitely see that. So, but let's get to the next question, which is probably what our DVC audience really wants to know is what does this mean for DVC users? So, Oz, this is for you. What does the acquisition mean for these users? Are things going to be the same? What's going to be different? How do you see the roadmap going forward? Those type of things.
Sure. So what does it mean to users? First, get everyone kind of at ease. We don't plan on changing the license. We don't plan on making substantial changes to the way the product is now oriented. We love DVC. We love the community behind it. We want to continue to grow it and nurture it exactly the same way that Iterative has been doing for all these years. What it does mean is that now members of the core team working on DVC has transitioned to be lakeFS employees. So now they have our backing and they can continue to contribute and to help foster the community and the product. The roadmap will continue with the same transparency, right? We're both open source companies. We have this in our roots. Issues are managed in GitHub. Discussions happen on Discord and GitHub. Like we are very much committed to kind of carrying that torch and continue kind of having both projects prosper. So we're very much committed to that.
Awesome. That's great. And for Dmitry, I would love for you, like looking back, to share like what have been your proudest moments or most interesting moments from the community or from user experience that you learned through your journey.
Good question. I think there were quite a bit of moments when I was surprised, with my interaction with the community. The obvious one is the first comment on GitHub after the release. I remember when I released it, it was 2017, it was beginning of May, and I was thinking about release, like should I release like tomorrow or day after? And in a couple of days it was May 4th, and I was thinking, oh, I need to release this on a Star Wars Day.
Totally.
Yeah, so Star Wars Day it's a day of DVC release. And in a few days, I would say like maybe like in a week or 2 weeks, I got like a couple comments on GitHub. And it was like, wow, people actually did pay attention to this, because release was like not some like a like a big announcement with a lot of traffic, right? So I published in the Hacker News, it didn't work out. I published on Reddit, it did work. There were about like thousands of users on the websites, but that's not like a massive number, But some people recognize and start chatting with me about oh, I tried this and it worked. Like, how can you help me? So that was like the moment I was thinking, oh my God, so I should not give up. I should continue working on this. And in a couple years, like a year, maybe year and a half, yeah, I think it's like a year and a half, 2 years, the project got to very interesting moment when we are getting like a lot of course, feedback from the users, but users start writing about DVC. So I remember first blog post about DVC. Some person was kind of like thinking about data versioning and challenges with the data in the Git, and he mentioned DVC. So that was another kind of moment that's, oh my God, that's we got somewhere where. And like maybe like 6 months later, there were a lot of blog posts about DVC. Every month we had like a 1, 2 blog posts about DVC, like how people use it. Like some people like, write about their workflow with DVC. Some people write about DVC specifically. Like it was amazing moment. And all of those was not just great to look, great for community, great to feel this feedback, but also very helpful in terms of like how you develop the product, right? Because you are getting like a lot of signals from the people that who ask for some specific things. So yeah, community help a lot DVC to kind of like shape functionality, the product itself, the APIs, documentation. So that was a huge help. I think that's like the power of open source helped to build like a good product.
For sure. Cool. Thank you for that. So the next question, is on the future outlook. And this one is for Oz. Well, and for both of you, but we'll start with Oz. A lot has changed over the last couple of years, and I think at the moment it can be hard to predict the future with how quickly everything is changing in the AI/ML space. But with that said, Oz, what is your take on the future of data version control in AI/ML, and what will be needed for successful projects and teams going forward?
Sure. So I think there are kind of a few dimensions where I can take this question. So I think one of the biggest things that we've been seeing on the lakeFS community, and I think it's kind of always been true for DVC, is like work around unstructured data. Right. So we started from kind of the data lake approach, where a lot of the data is tabular and very kind of structured and organized. Whereas for AI and ML workloads, that's typically not so much the case, right? It could be anything from images to documents, PDFs, or embeddings of those entities, along with some structured data about the metadata of those entities and some other data that's coming from the organization. So kind of a mix of everything together. So I think that's something that organizations are already facing and teams are already facing. I like DVC's approach of like being very unopinionated about what data you're actually holding. Like it doesn't care if it's a CSV or an image. So I think it's kind of positioned well to be a good fit for that. That's also true for lakeFS. And you know, as the saying goes, it's like next year there's going to be another kind of quantum leap in how much data is going to get managed and how much is going to be actually pushed into those applications. So I think we'll see more teams adopting tools like DVC and lakeFS because managing things at that scale becomes a real challenge. And you might get away without one of those tools if you have a few CSVs at your disposal, not so much when you start talking about large quantities of documents and images and all that.
For sure.
So I predict a growth in adoption and a growth in like the amount of different modalities behind that. I think these will be kind of two big things that we'll see.
Mm-hmm. And Dmitry, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. So new modality that what we see like all across the industry, right? So with new models, right? LLMs, a lot of different industry like adopt this approach, and I expect like a lot of new models will be built in the next couple of years. I'm especially excited about biotech, for example, because there's so many opportunity to make our life better, right? Using this kind of similar approach, but like with more vertical space. And in general, yeah, more modalities, more data in terms of amount of data, right? And there is like a two kind of direction, right? In here. One is infrastructure direction, like how to store data, manage data. That's, I believe, like lakeFS is kind of going this infrastructure direction. And second direction is how to operate on metadata layer, how to manage metadata, kind of like on a higher level abstraction, how to provide this metadata about large files for users, for agents. So that's direction that we are getting with the data chain.
Cool. Thank you. All right, well, let's get to some of the questions from the audience now. Let me see what we have here. All right, we have some that came in from before the webinar, and I think we've covered these, but I'll just go over them if you have anything to add. And these are probably mostly for Oz, given like that you guys are maintaining now. So will this change affect any of my existing projects and workflows with DVC? Will they have to do anything?
There should be no impact. So
Okay.
existing code should continue to work. New releases will continue to go out. The only kind of cosmetic thing you might notice, and that already happened, is that if you go to the GitHub repository, if you go to iterative/DVC, which was the home of DVC up until a couple of days ago, it would now redirect you to Treeverse, which is the parent company behind lakeFS/DVC. All workflows should continue and like are designed to continue to work exactly the same way. There should be no interruptions.
Okay, fantastic. The next question is, will DVC remain open source? I think you answered that. Licenses are the same, but anything to add?
Apache 2 license, that's also the license for lakeFS open source. We have no plans on changing that.
Okay, great. And the same for the roadmap, new features and releases like before, open an issue.
Continues the same way, engagement on Discord and GitHub as it was. Hopefully now with a bit more resources to handle things coming from the community.
Awesome. And then we did get this one that came in today from Steve. What will happen with experiment tracking? Will it be supported?
Yeah, so it's true that it's not like the core of us as a company, right? It's not really part of the data version control story, but it is part of DVC. And I know that DVC users are passionate about those capabilities. So we plan on continue the maintenance of them, continuous improvement of those capabilities. Like we have no plans to remove any functionality from DVC, including experiment tracking.
Awesome. Great. Well, I think that is it for our questions. So if you are curious, this is mostly full of DVC users. If you're curious about lakeFS, this is how you can reach out to them. The lakefs.io is the website. And if you wanted to contact them, it's hello@lakefs.io. And then here are some resources if you haven't caught these yet. Dmitry wrote a blog post about this transition. It's on the DVC site. There's an FAQ blog post on the DVC blog as well. Einat, or the CEO of lakeFS, also wrote a blog post on the lakeFS blog. Our YouTube channel is listed here, and there will be the recording there. And then finally, as always, if you need to open an issue, head to GitHub, and now you'll find it under Treeverse, and DVC is under Treeverse. So with that, thank everyone for being here today, and thank you, Oz, and thank you for Dmitry. I'm really excited that the DVC project continues on and has found such a wonderful home. So until next time, have a great day. Happy data version controlling.